Hey there, www.andrewmarkmusic.com, Riff-Vlog on What Kind of Father Are You? I'll preface this by saying this isn't really a video about the merits or efficacy of religion within society. That is a separate video, a separate issue. This is more questioning the philosophy of religion as it pertains and relates to the father analogy, the father metaphor, and how that is entangled and entwined with our religious traditions. And does it make any sense? Is it justifiable to use that metaphor? And I think my main point of argument would be from what we know about parenting and what we know about being a good father from modern knowledge, from modern epistemology, through modern psychological insight. We know that to be classified as a good father, you do not beat your children. You don't beat them up. Can we agree to that? Is there anybody out there who would say anything contrary to that basic premise? So can we agree that it's a given that you are not a good parent if you beat your children up? All right. So if anybody disputes that's going to be a tough conversation. It's going to be a long one, and I'm going to need to be convinced why, a child beater is good. Have at her. If you've got that argument, send it to me. But I don't see how it's tenable or a valid position to hold. So I think most people will agree that if you're a father and you beat your children, you are a bad parent. You are a bad father. Now, there may be reasons for that. There may be sort of this, Russian doll nested, causation where that father has been beaten as a child and his father was beaten as a child, and this is certainly possible. But that aside, is it a valid analogy or metaphor for religion? Certainly Western theism uses it the most, and I would argue no. It's not transferable to what we know today about parenting and what makes a good parent, which makes that the claims of these religions based on that idea impossible. I mean, there's no argument here. It's not even possible that God can be good by this definition and by this framing. Now, modern psychology would say that a parent who does that is evil to a certain degree, so is that transferable? I would say yes. As a Gnostic, I would say if you're God and you beat your children up, and this is what's happening to everybody on this planet, they're being beat up to the point of death, and being told they're loved, that's wicked. I mean, that is evil, and this is the Gnostic position. It also, at the same time, and tragically and sadly, it makes most religionists who believe this idea delusional. They suffer from cognitive dissonance. They have bought into this distortion of the demiurge. I've likened it to battered wife syndrome, where the humanity is the battered wife of the demiurge. So you get into possibly ideas of Hinduism and reincarnation. And is it fair to say that you're good if you wipe my memory and then send me here to say, well, you've got to learn something? I mean, what kind of school? I know on this I'm switching topics here a little bit. What kind of school says, well, we're here to teach you, but we got to wipe your memory first? It's nonsensical. If we can agree to that, and we put those two ideas together, then there's only one possibility. The God who controls this matrix is evil. It's wiped your memory, and not for good reasons. And there's, from a rational perspective or a rational deconstructive, there's no justification for it. You cannot argue that this God in this situation within this matrix, we'll use that word, whatever it is good by any rational definition. So, is it possible that God doesn't exist? Of course. I'm sympathetic to the soft atheist or weak atheism, if understood and defined properly. I'm not a fan of hard atheism or anti-theism. Although I understand it, I don't like it. I don't like that position. I find it untenable. So I think, it's fair to ask then, if we're going to use this metaphor, then what's a good parent? What would a good God be like if we're going to use the parent analogy? Well, it wouldn't beat the crap out of you, that's for sure. It wouldn't make a universe where pretty well every minute of every day it's trying to, kill you and take your life away by every imaginable, somewhat horrid means. A python just ate a woman recently. A pastor got eaten by a crocodile or an alligator in Africa recently, and this is one, I'm just going to share this story. This is the one after like 35 years of thinking about it, where I thought, man, there's just, it can't be a God. The atheists are probably right, but there was a story about 5 years ago of this woman that they found in an elevator in China somewhere, who had been found there, dead, and she'd been in that elevator for, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 6 months, if I recall correctly. I don't know about the building. Perhaps it was some kind of construction building, and it was left, and she was there inspecting or something. Who knows? That aspect of this story I don't know, but I do know that a woman died by herself in an elevator, and I meditated on that. I contemplated on that. Now, my meditations and my contemplations were projection. I don't know what happened in that elevator. Maybe God did come and rescue her, but he certainly didn't take her body. Otherwise, of course, we wouldn't have found her. So, can you put yourself in that elevator, a woman? And, the first thing I thought of is, how physically she would have beat herself up, vocally, screaming, pounding on the walls, for help. And this day after day after day, and, having to live with her own excrement in there as she slowly passes, and starving to death, and just the absolute horror, the existential horror that she would have had to go through to die alone like that. And, you know, if you really, really think about that, there's no loving God here. You know, no loving God would allow that to happen. It's certainly not any kind of parental God, right? So if God exists, it's not a parent. We have to wipe that idea out of our mind. Now, from the Gnostic perspective, or one of the Gnostic perspectives, and the one I hold because I think it makes the most sense out of this, although it's not palatable, is that this place is actually owned and trademarked by the demiurge. We can think of it like this, and that the true God has nothing to do with this place, other than it sent the Christos here to just say, yes, you know, you're in a nightmare, but there is good news, although it's not good news here. As to what any secret knowledge is of getting out of this, well, you know, that's argument for atheism, because that's so obscure, nobody knows what the secret knowledge is. Is it Kundalini? Well, Kundalini is more popular than frickin' McDonald's, you know? I mean, how secret is Kundalini? I mean, not to mention it's all Kundalini's co-opted by the neoliberal capitalists now, you know, selling it as you know, soteriology, and, you know, I mean, is that really the Gnosticism? You know, I thought it was supposed to be secret. And then, you know, add on to that, I'm rambling here a bit, but add on to that, if you look at the lore of this type of tantra, right, you know, there's this denigration of Christendom's miracles. Oh, he was just a show off walking on water compared to what we can do with our cities. Yet, you know, we've had universities for at least 100 years, you know, 50 years in India, and there's not been one demonstrable, evidenced, repeatable, studied, peer-reviewed of even one city, one, you know, and come on, you know, that should argue for either atheism, that there is no God here, there is no supernaturalism, because nobody can demonstrate it, not one single aspect of it. Yet that's juxtaposed to this hubris that comes along with Kundalini Tantra, you know. So then it just comes down to my Gnostic view that this demiurge just lies about everything. You know, it's just inherently deceptive, but it has the right to do that, and it owns this place, and there's nothing that you can do. And this is where I get into, you know, there is no free will, because if there is a God outside of this dome or whatever it is, right, then the only way you're getting out is if it takes you out, for whoever you are to it, or whatever you mean to the true God that is not involved with this demiurge. It's the one that does it. It takes you out of here. This is no will of your own. There's nothing that you can do to get out of this prison. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But at least it's logically consistent, you know. It's logically consistent to me, and I believe it is logically consistent on a universal scale, you know, which makes, what's really curious to me is myriad and sundry personal religious philosophies whose foundations are based on the idea of free will, right? You know, when you come across as many of them as I have in 40 years, you start to become suspicious of the very notion of free will, right? You know, especially when free will is embedded within, you know, a universe or cosmological situation of determinism. You know, now I know they have QM and all this now, but that's all speculative. Come on, it's speculative. Quantum mechanics is about physics. It's not about spirituality. First off, Ken Wilber made that point. So be very, very careful about what you believe when it comes to quantum mechanics and spirituality. Bullshit piled higher and deeper. Anyway, I guess I'm kind of rambling here. It would be nice if there was a good father. I'm not seeing it anywhere. Perhaps there is, but it's not there by any of the religious, normative interpretations of these traditions. That's more consistent with the demiurge. Anyway, www.andrewmartinmusic.com, Riff-Vlog on what makes a good father. And there you go. Peace out. Peace the fuck out.